Well, if I could just steer it a little bit in the area of like counseling and psychology, because that's my expertise.
Let's do it. Yeah.
In that, when you look, if you were to examine, I don't know, like if you were an expert in animal research or something, and there was some exotic animal, I don't know, some penguins or something, I'm not sure, and you were observing their behavior, right? And you observed that they were doing strange things, like they were no longer having regular intercourse for some reason, or they were, I don't know, eating some leaves all the time so that they could naturally miscarry their babies, kind of thing, or not naturally, unnaturally, or doing strange things to like prevent themselves from having offspring. You would think something's wrong with these penguins or whatnot, like what's wrong? Like we have to figure this out. Like there's something at heart that isn't going right. And I kind of feel, I don't want to compare us to, we're rational beings and everything else, but there's something wrong. If you take a step back and you wonder, whoa, why are we killing our own offspring?
And how much more wrong if we're rational? So if I see a penguin aborting its babies, and you're like, holy crap, something wicked is happening, all the more evil if I'm rational and I'm not acting on instinct.
So I believe the Christian response here, Christ's response here, is to bring healing. So yes, of course, there are things that violate certain lines, right, where we have to have laws or we have to step in strongly. But I think a longer term effect that's going to have more of a positive result is if we actually work on healing the heart. If we actually work on healing people, like to understand underneath all of this, what is it that causes people to be in this place and to believe these things? And I think when you go from heart to heart with person to person, you discover
That's exactly right.
so much. I have an example I think I shared with you the other day, if you don't mind me sharing. I had this one client, and he unfortunately has passed away already, but he had a rare form of, I think some kind of leukemia or some kind of blood disease. But he was the most beautiful person. I mean, this was a guy who, was saying a holy hour every morning through his suffering and right up to his death. He just gave himself totally to Christ. He prayed the rosary. He was just, I don't know, he was just a light for so many people. And I was working with him through the grieving process. He kept bringing up the fact, though, occasionally, that he was strongly pro-choice. And as a counselor, there's not much I can say. My job is not to, tell people what to believe. That's not what I'm there for in that context at all. And so I was just like, okay, and once in a while, because we get into little conversations, sidebar conversations here and there, I would just little challenges, why would you believe, like, you're Catholic? I see how it didn't seem consistent in some way. And and then once in a while, to my discredit, I sort of argued a little bit. I couldn't help it. Like once in a while, I just sort of make an argument, and then he got really defensive and that, and then I pulled back. I don't want to lose a therapeutic relationship. But he said he made some comment about it at another point, and I can remember something hit me like a flash of lightning, because I had remembered his earlier story, his earlier history before his conversion, and I'd remembered one particular girlfriend that he described having, and it just hit me, and I said, "Hey," his name is not John, but I said, "Hey, John, did she have an abortion?" And he just went, his whole face just changed, and he just started weeping. And I realized, oh my gosh, I was barking up the wrong tree the whole time. His defense, the radical position that he had was a defense for protecting something that was deep inside of him that was really, really, truly grieving and lost. And he had never had children. He died without children, and that was always that was something he wished he'd always wanted a child. So.
No, that's beautiful. It's a great sort of microcosm of the larger story. We're coming at it from life begins at conception and giving the facts, which is necessary. But if the reason you're objecting to me has to do with deep pain you're experiencing, you're not going to hear me necessarily.
Yeah. And so I think what brings for a lot of people that are, strongly in a pro-choice position, there's a deeper pain. There's some kind of deeper loss that's informing the intransigence, the aggressiveness of their position. And so what happens is we come in and try to approach that in some way. We're perceived as that aggressive, whatever their trauma was, it was probably somebody hurting them.
Even if you're only laying out a syllogism in a Facebook post, you're seen as an aggressor.
You are that abuser to them. And so if you double up with your anger and resentment and that, you're just escalating the situation. You're not making it any better. And I feel like Christ's response is our path. I mean, in all the examples where he approached women who had, in some way struggled, he approaches them with this incredible love, right? He approaches them not wishy-washy in his stance, of course, but he changes their hearts. So I'm just a big believer in changing hearts is just so much more important to me than laws. I mean, sometimes laws, obviously, we have to deal with. We're in a society. But changing hearts has to be what we do. Loving people in their distress has to be what we do.
But back to my point earlier about there's one way I speak to the person in front of me who's suffering, and there's one way I speak to those propagandists who are trying to promote abortion. Right? The same Christ said, "Come to me, you who are weak and whatever, I'll give you," not whatever, sorry, but I will give you rest. And then elsewhere he says, "You whitewash tombs, you brood of vipers," and he's flipping over tables. So I just don't want to fall into an either or kind of way of thinking. I think it's really important that people use the strongest rhetoric possible. I don't mean lie, I don't mean exaggerate, but the strongest rhetoric possible to condemn such a heinous act while in individual. So how do we balance that? Or is that something we think we can balance?
Yeah, I can speak for myself. I'm a therapist, so I'm not ever going to take that stance. I'm just
whitewash tomb.
Even publicly, I don't think I would. So that's not going to be my role, but it might be yours. It might be someone else's to be that kind of a prophet who has to stand up in front of the people and call them to task, right? And if that's your calling, then God bless you. But for me, it's going to be, I feel like my calling is one of healing, one of encouragement, one of trying to help move toward transformation.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought about the video.